Welcome to Seven Trumpets Prepper. And this video, guys, if you've ever heard and paid attention to anything I've ever said on this channel, pay attention to this. I want to first off say that the content that I'm about to cover in this will more than likely offend you. And that's good, because I want to wake your mind up to the things that you need to hear. Because if you are true to character, if you are true to wanting to serve the Most High, you need to listen to this and walk in it if you're going to serve Him. Number two is the things I'm going to tell you is not what you're going to hear inside the doors of a church. I'm sorry to break your heart, but I used to attend a church. I used to be a part of the system. I used to be in the heart of it. I've seen it where that you find truth and you bring it forward, and nobody wants you to tell nobody because, well, that would wreck the status quo. I left church about 2009 in the winter, and I have not been back since until just recently. I went back to take some notes. Some family had asked me to go with them, and they just kept hammering me, and so finally I went back and visited. I had a preconceived notion of what to expect when I went, and I was actually shocked at what I heard. That day, I heard the teacher on that particular day was speaking that morning about Babylonianism and how that, many of the things that is in Roman Catholicism have passed forward into modern day Christianity. Yet they still worship on Rome's day, and I'll get into this in a minute if you're confused. Furthermore, moving through the service, when the pastor got up to speak, he said that pride comes before destruction. And I believe the scripture goes on to state, "On a haughty heart before the fall." He also quoted and said that we have to have a standard above the pagan world we are living in. I cannot agree more. And that's exactly why I'm making this video, is because I believe that once you hear these 10 things, if this does not change your life, I don't know anything else will. I'm doing this also on a monumental day, the day after that homosexual marriage has been made legal in the United States. This, according to Scripture, is an abomination. It's a class of sin far beyond what the Scripture just defines as sin. This is an abomination. So, there's a fundamental shift going on in America. And very soon, what you see as the church house, you're going to see going in a totally fundamental different direction, and you wonder, how can that be? I'll get to it in just a moment. The 10 points that I'm going over are in no particular order, with the exception of number 2. I made sure to get it to the very top, but I wanted to put one above that is extremely important. So to begin with, why I left church and why you should leave church today and never return. Now, with that said, I believe it's important to meet in fellowship. We should not forsake the assembly of one another together. If you can find like-minded people and fellowship with them and worship the Father in spirit and truth, I encourage you to do it. Sadly, you will not find that in most churches today. So number 1 is keeping of the commandments. We find a recurring theme through churches that they stress the importance of keeping the 10 commandments while at least breaking 1 to 2 of them. The not having any other Elohim before the Most High, as we'll see in point number 2, they have definitely done that. The other point is keeping of the Sabbath. Many people keep the SUN day or the SAT day. I don't say the days of the week anymore, as that they are pagan in name and nature. But instead of keeping the Father's Creator's calendar, as you can check a link there to a video that will teach you a lot, and up there on the iCards, you can see that the Creator's appointed times of worship are different to that of Rome's on the pagan Roman calendar. Okay, so we see in America and in the world today that the keeping of the Father's commandments is completely nothing of use to most churches today. They're more focused on grace, salvation and grace, than they are being obedient, because we are taught in the Scripture, as you can read in John right there in that chapter, that if you love me, keep my commandments. If you're loved of Messiah by keeping the commandments, you're loved of the Father. It's not rocket science. We have to have faith and keep the commandments. The teaching of this is throughout the pages of Scripture. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Number 2, why I would leave church today and never return. One of the most powerful reasons to never attend church ever again. As I continue through this, though, I want to make sure and put one more last blanket statement in there, is that I love all humanity and I want to see them saved. I do not want to turn anyone away from the Father, from seeing salvation through His Son. I don't want to turn anybody away, but you have to understand that we have to separate ourselves from the world. 501c3 is what many churches are classified as. This makes them a non-profit entity, but a business entity at the same time. It also means that you have reached the hand across the aisle and getting the government to accept you in their sight. You need not have them ask them for acceptance. Church and state was divided a long time ago. You either serve the Elohim of the Most High Himself, or you serve the government, you serve Lucifer. Well, it is obvious today that most churches would rather receive that gracious benefit of the handout from the government than to be separate from the world and honor the Most High. Messiah asked Kepha before if he paid tithe, when they were, paid tax, whenever he was asked of this. We are to be separate of the world. Messiah also said, pointed out before that, asked whose inscription was on the coin, and we're to pay there's a difference there as you read in the context of the Scripture right there of the kingdoms of the world and the kingdoms of the Most High. Anyway, 501c3, this is where it's going to get really sketchy really fast, and I found this to be a very prominent time to do this video, is that as you see with the homosexual marriage becoming legalized in America, churches that are 501c3 that are ingrained with the government will have to honor this now, or they will face penalties. People can be fined, imprisoned, who knows what will happen. Persecution is coming now for those who truly desire to serve the Master. Number 3 is keeping the appointed times of the Father. As we read throughout the pages of Scripture, we see a completely opposite set of worship standards as to that which the world teaches us to keep today. There's all sorts of pagan holidays kept, from the Christ Mass to the Ishtar worship, to all these wicked things that we see going on, as opposed to the Father's appointed times of worship, of keeping His true Shabbat on His calendar, by keeping the appointed times of Feast of Tabernacles and keeping the Passover in remembrance. All these things, if we are going to celebrate holidays, why are we not celebrating holy days? And keeping the Father's appointed times. It's very strange to me, as if we join ourselves to His people, if we're joining ourselves to Him in keeping His commands, as converting our hearts, and we're crossing over from the wicked lifestyle we used to live to serving the Father, why are we not trying to walk in His statutes, His judgments and commandments? This is a paradox to me, because most churches have no desire to keep the Father's appointed times, and even the seventh day of the pagan Roman calendar, they won't even keep that. It's interesting. Anyway, to find out more about the Father's Creator's calendar, right there, once again, is the link to it. Number 4 is end-time prophecy. This is something you hardly ever hear spoken about in the church houses anymore. Everyone always says when they do speak of it that, He could come at any moment. But there's clear chains of prophetic things described to take place before His appointed return. There's blood moons. The moon will turn to blood. The sun will turn to darkness. There'll be things fall from the sky. There are all sorts of catastrophic events. Yet these things are not described and spoke of in the church houses today, nor warned the people before they come. And the lack of telling these people this is keeping them lulled in a state of, when this does fall on them, it's going to be terrible. Number 5, one that irks me to death, is the true names. Everyone wants to serve the Jesus of Rome instead of Yahushua of the Hebrews. They don't want to call upon His name. They don't want to worship the Father and call upon His name, Yahweh. Instead, they want to call Him the Lord or the God. it seems to be in Christianity that it's the only religion that seems to not know its master. It's crazy. People will look at you like you're an imbecile and speak harshly to you, that you say Yahushua or have a blessed day in Yahushua name instead of saying, the JSUS of Rome. Apparently, if you try to say anything that's back to the Hebrew roots, then you're a fool or you're evil because that you're trying to do this, when it's complete stupidity to think that a man's name is his name and then you try to give him another name and that's by the name which you should call him. Somebody explain that to me. Anyway, number 6 is his people. Most church houses today tell you that the Jews in Israel today are the true Hebrews, and this could not be further from the truth. They're nothing but imposters. Absolute, complete, total imposters. Edomites and Ashkenazis from Khazar Empire. None of these people in the land of Israel today, hardly any of them, are true Hebrews. The true Hebrews are what is defined as the African American, the black man. Not all of them, but many of the people that are defined with those characteristics are the descendants of Abraham, the true Hebrews. And they're scattered throughout all the nations today because of the abominations and sins of their ancestors. This is who the true Hebrews are. And whether you like it or not, it is what it is. You can serve the white JESUS of Rome, or you can serve the black Hebrew Yahushua of the Israelites. There is a clear definition in Scripture defining who the true Hebrews are, and it's Deuteronomy 28. They're the only people that meet these specific characteristics. And I encourage you to watch a documentary I've done in the past that defines this out very clearly from Scripture. And it's about 80% of the material that's available. There's so much more if you dig very deep into the Scripture, and you can see this. Sadly, though, that this is something that most pastors are very well aware of, but glaze over the truth, because if that was brought forward, it would be one of the most powerful pillars to overthrow the Christianity system that we have today, because it's so paganized that everything that's in place now, if a pastor told the truth, he would be out of a job and income overnight. Number 7 is embracing of sin. What I said earlier about homosexual marriage. I love all of humanity. But at the end of the day, if you acknowledge it for what it is, then here's the situation you're in. If you accept Scripture and follow it line for line, then Scripture plainly defines, just for example, that homosexuality is an abomination. It's sodomy, or a sodomitic nature of a person to do these things. Well, if the church houses, which embrace the 501c3 that are essentially a business and the pastor is a paid CEO, then what you end up with is the fact that these entities will now have to submit to honoring that of the government as a will. And one of the government's wills now is that homosexuals will be able to join one another, become one flesh, which is an abomination as far as sodomitic behavior goes, that will cause them to make the church join them in marriage, because they are a recognized entity by the federal government. Therefore, they have to honor it, or they're discriminating against another human being, because they've no longer a separate religious entity. They have become one with the government. Therefore, they have to honor the government's will. This embracing of sin is a clear definition that one is supposed to be kodesh, separate, holy, clean, set apart, and cut the wickedness off from their life. If you continue to go and worship in the midst of these people and embrace this sin, then you are embracing that sin into your life. Therefore, we cannot be a part of that and serve the Master. So this is one reason that for sure a man cannot attend modern day church anymore, just because the 501c3 now gives way to the embracing of sin. The hiding of truth in Scripture. One of the most saddest situations that a person can get into is the fact when you bring forth a truth to a pastor and a leader of the church, like a deacon, and you tell them that you have found these precious, precious truths in Scripture. And their acknowledgement to you is that, yes, they know this is to be true. They know where to find it in Scripture, but it cannot be done within the confines of the church because it's against the church doctrine, or that's not how things have always been done. Doctrine of church should be what thus saith Yahweh, what thus saith the Word, not what thus saith the church's dogma, and make the Word fit into it. Therefore, because of this fact, many churches will continue in error. They will never change. You have to set yourself apart, because the church will never set itself apart, ever. And the last point I would make on that, on number 8, is that as the churches will continue to go in darkness, more and more truth will be hid. The light only is shown to those who are diligently seeking it. The light will be made broader and broader. Those that continue to walk in darkness, more and more darkness is all that is going to continue to be. You know, Messiah said that the blind lead the blind. Will they not both fall in the ditch? Check the scripture there. These blind pastors are leading the blind flock into a ditch. Only a few, only small remnant is to be saved in the last days. You know, there's a small portion of humanity that's not going to go down the path of destruction. You need to be that small portion. Number 9 is preparing for the final events. I have enjoyed the years that I've prepped for these final events because people look to me like I'm a fool. And that's wonderful. I would not have it any other way, because when these events do come, I will have the most powerful key to turn people's hearts to the Most High, as opposed to all these pastors that's led people in darkness, because all those years I've been chastised, I've been made fun of, I've been mocked, I've been brought down low because of it. Then will come my time to be a true witness to the Most High, because my actions, my obedience, my works coupled with faith, just like Noah, just like Joseph and the granaries in Egypt, just like all these great men before me, a humble and lowly man like myself, being obedient, preparing, while the others say, oh, you'll be, pre-tribulation raptured out of here. That right there is going to be the separation stone, because the pre-tribulation rapture doctrine is the most powerful tool that Satan has, because it lulls men into a state of sleep that it's not my generation. It's not now that I need to worry about. There's not going to be no martial law. There's not going to be RFID chips. There's not going to be all these catastrophic 7 trumpets take place. There's not going to be, all this universal sin. It's not my generation. Yet it has creeped up on you, and it is here, and you are in the midst of the last days. Lastly, one of the most powerful doctrines of wickedness that I see in the church house today is the Trinity doctrine. The Most High Yahweh is one. Elohim is one. Unity you may see as the definition of that word within Scripture, as it was taken in context in Deuteronomy. As you see throughout the pages of Scripture, Messiah was obedient to the Most High, worshiped the Most High, compelled others to worship the Most High, and submitted to the Most High. At no time did he ever outright say that he was the Most High. He said that him and his Father was one. We are to be of one mind with Messiah, just as Messiah is to be one with the Father. But it's just like a wife and husband is one flesh, but the husband is the head of the marriage. There is a defining feature there, because the Most High is above all. Messiah, he created Messiah. In the very beginning, we can read this in the pages of Enoch, that he was with the Most High in the beginning. There is a lot to be understood from this, because the Spirit of the Most High, the Spirit of Messiah with us working, the Ruach HaKodesh, there is a clear division. We are not to worship 3 entities. We are to worship the one and true Creator. This stems from Babylonianism, and I find it interesting that when I went to a SUN Day church, that even the church itself acknowledged many of the Babylonian things. This is great to hear that truth is being spoken, but at the end of the day, if you apply all these aspects that I have shown to you today, and you search this with a diligent heart and seek the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, and study this diligently, you will find that the only place you have to worship is with a small group of a people and a small assembly of fellow believers, like-minded people, or at home with your family, away from this, because the time is coming when those who walk in spirit and truth will be persecuted for walking in righteousness. That day is before us, and that's why I'm warning you now, and that's why I hope this video makes a difference in your life. If you don't know Messiah, now's the day to accept Him and definitely